This is part two of our walk through Bellingham of the development projects that are going through town. In part one, we talked about the Hartford Avenue area, basically most of the development in the north end of town, Macy Estates, the Meehan properties, WS Development, also known as the Shops at Bellingham. We then proceeded down to Maple Street, talked about some solar, finishing up with the Amazon project, and here and there with the mulch project in between. Which brings us to part two, which today's segment is focused on the center of town. And with that, I'll turn it over to Cindy.
All right, good morning, everybody. So last segment, we covered quite a bit of turf, if you will, in Bellingham. Today, we're going to focus specifically on the area that's unique to the center of town, up through Rapid Refill. And what you're going to see is a lot of the very visible development that's been going on has some really meaningful purpose to us as residents of Bellingham. So we're going to walk through those one by one today. And we're also going to share some very important demographics of just sort of how things are shifting within our very own town and how these developments coming in are really going to help us take us to the next level in terms of our town. So we'll start first with Jim. We're going to go through the list, or what?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I know, as Michael had mentioned, we did end at Maple Street, so I thought the Maple 140 corridor is a very good place to start. And we can work our way through the center of town. Bellingham, as I know we mentioned in the first episode, it has three very distinct areas of town: the north, center, and south. And so, in the center of town, as you leave Maple Street and head towards Town Hall, you first are going to see a lot of new activity to an area which we now call the Curtis Apartments. So that was permitted this year. It is sited as you're passing essentially PJs and Superfusion. There's a large vacant space that I'm sure many have noticed over the years for many different types of uses. That area is going to be cleaned up, and a 250 unit apartment complex is going there. And so it's named the Curtis Apartments, and the 250 unit apartment complex is rather unique to Bellingham. Obviously, we have one major rental complex in town, and so this again is what we talked about in the first episode, a 40B, a comprehensive permit. And again, the comprehensive permits do override our local control. However, the strategic aspect of this is a 250 rental apartment complex now gets us over that threshold that the state requires every town to have, that 10% affordability. And with that, we regain our control of our local bylaws again. And that was really strategic. We had just updated our housing production plan, understanding, that our numbers and demographics, and we saw that we were about 200 or so units shy of getting to that 10%. So we were looking for an area of town that was, as least impactful as could be. We were mindful of the fact that we had just improved our Maple 140 corridor. And this one is the closest to highway access and the MBTA. So we were lucky to be able to partner with the landowner and the developer. This actually went through, I know it came to the select board for support, and it went to the zoning board of appeals, and eventually was permitted. One of the main things that we looked at was both traffic impacts and school impacts. We did a rather robust analysis of both, doing a whole 140 corridor study to make sure that, traffic impacts will be as minimal as possible. There's going to be a lot of traffic improvements in that area, as folks will see. And then in terms of the school, analysis, we did a lot of comparisons with similar developments in the area. The one just over the town line in Franklin, our Jefferson, or now the Charles apartment complex. And we've also looked at a number of studies, too, to see what truly are the numbers that would impact the schools. And, it is surprising to see that it's rather minimal. when you dive deep into those numbers, though, it kind of makes sense. A lot of these are 2-bedroom apartments, and so in addition, the town is somewhat of an aging population, and just knowing families, not just in this town, but in the state and the nation across, the families are certainly not having the 6-7 children anymore. It's a much smaller dynamic. So that's going to be the first kind of anchor to 140 that everyone's going to see this coming year.
Jim, if I could just interrupt and talk to Dennis a little bit. I mean, one of the things that we found, the data that I have from the school department shows as recently as 2013-14, we had 2,300 students in the school. 3 years later, that dropped to 2,175, 2,100 in 2019, and our projection for 2023 is under 2,000. So that shows capacity about 300 students. Maybe you could talk about the impact the charter school in Franklin and the decision to leave the school district has on Bellingham going to BVT. Because what I hear or see on social media is people talking about, oh my God, we're going to have 600 more properties built in town, and we're going to cover a lot of them in the next segments. But we have capacity, and it's not that we have a concern about students in the schools. We have the room. Maybe you could touch on some of that.
Sure. It is it's always been, in all the years I've been here, one of the biggest concerns when residential neighborhoods are developed. What's the impact going to be on the schools? We've had a declining school population. We peaked around 4,200 students in the early or late 70s, early 80s, and since then we've gone from 4,200 down to, as you're saying, could potentially be under 2,000. That has a lot to do with smaller families, but it also has to do with the choices parents have today. They can send their children to another community through school choice. Some children from other communities come to Bellingham through school choice, but we are upside down. We do have more children leaving through school choice. We also have the charter school in Franklin, which has a huge impact as well. BVT is a part of our public school system, so I don't necessarily put that in the same category because we pay for that. But the net result is when we receive Chapter 70 school funding each year, it's a positive. It goes up, but we also have deducts, and the deducts account for children that are going out of district for school choice or for charter school. This year it'll be about $3 million that we are sending out of our own school district to cover the cost of charter school impacts as well as school choice children going out of the community. So you're right, we do have the capacity. The high school was built for upwards of 900 students, and I think we have somewhere around
753 right now is the number, and that's a 8 through 12.
8 through 12, right. And so there is capacity. I would feel more comfortable letting Mr. Morano speak to the capacity, but we know that there is capacity, and the more children that come to school in Bellingham, obviously the more aid we get from the state. There's a formula which reflects the number of students. So it's always a concern when it always has been. It's the first thing that people look at, or residents look at, is what's the impact going to be on the schools. But you're right, we've had a declining enrollment, and I think it's a positive when we have more children coming into the system and keeping our schools keeping our schools well staffed. It means that we have to have children in them to support them.
And for some of these projects, there's mitigation to the school department as part of their arrangements, and we'll talk about those as we go forward.
Yeah, and one of the things with this particular project that we took into account as well is when you look at that Route 140 corridor, this project will be consistent with what you see on Route 40. You got the Linden Meyer Industrial Building, you have the Rapid Refill Plaza there, you've got the Urban Air, you've got the new facility right across the street, the 350,000 square foot distribution center. You've got the new urgent care Milford facility just over the line in Franklin. So it's consistent with what you have on the Route 140 corridor.
As you look at it, if you're going into Franklin, the left side is industrial, and the right side is, even as you get to Gorelick's, is the Franklin complex, and this is going to be of similar size.
Exactly.
Although I think ours has a better courtyard, and the design elements were done very well by the developer.
There's going to be a number of really quality amenities there. They're talking about a courtyard for most of their residents, but also a small recreational area, a dog park that they were discussing of sharing with the community, and it also will be a nice path from this proposed apartment complex to that plaza to support all those businesses there. We certainly, the businesses took quite a hit this year, and any new customers, I'm sure, is going to be a benefit to them.
And sidewalks are part of these plans.
Exactly right.
Sidewalks, and it is about a 60 to probably, when it's done, 60 to 70 million dollars in value, which will generate upwards of $600,000 in new tax revenue.
When we had discussed planning this, our third segment is designed to talk about some of the tax implications of these projects and our tax base in Norfolk County and in the region. So we'll go into greater detail if people are wondering about that in segment 3. Right across the street from Curtis Apartments is Lincoln Properties, and maybe you can talk about the entrance to Curtis and the entrance to Lincoln Properties, and take us from there.
Sure. So this whole segment is really about putting the puzzle pieces together. So when we were talking with the folks about the apartments, we were also talking with Lincoln Properties about their warehouse interests across the street. So across the street, as we touched on, next to Lindemeyer, next to Antron Engineering, that's an industrial area back there. It's zoned industrial. So Lincoln Properties came to the town and said, we're looking to put an industrial complex in the industrial zone, and this is the area. What kind of connectivity is necessary there? And so we again started putting those puzzle pieces together. And as probably everybody sees driving down 140, there's that large wall of ledge that unfortunately Lincoln discovered during that process, and that will be further kind of molded as time goes on with additional development. But essentially has transpired is Lincoln has worked, I think, well with the town and Mass DOT, who ultimately has to approve any kind of traffic improvements in that area, and the apartments. So there will be one new intersection that's going to line up with both developments, and so it limits the amount of curb cuts and traffic turning movements that are going to be necessary, and it will create a safe environment for all the new developments there. So Lincoln Properties, as you do enter the site, is a new about 350,000 square foot industrial building. It's up. You might be able to see it if you crane your neck as you're passing Antron. Again, that's strategic. The planning board, I think, did a phenomenal job of trying to tuck it away so that it's back there. It's a nice state-of-the-art facility, but again, unless you happen to go at a time when a truck's taking a left out, you're not even going to notice that it's back there. And again, we don't know the tenant just yet, but as the planning process had proceeded, much like the Amazon facility, the planning board does look at essentially the worst case scenario. What would that worst case scenario look like, and how are you going to mitigate that? And so, again, a lot of mitigation came out of this development. There's going to be, again, sidewalks on 140, but a lot of investment towards the center of town, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit, to assist the town to limit the burden on us.
That's actually a great segue. And Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you to maybe give an overview to our viewers on the 126 TIP project, sort of how it came about and what we're going to be able to do to leverage that.
Yeah, well, the TIP project on Route 126 will reconstruct really the Route 126 corridor all the way from the Easy Douglas Street section, which is where the bus barn is. Everyone knows where the bus barn is in town, right up to the town center. Sidewalks, improved drainage, and anyone that drives up and down that road knows it's in rough shape. So it's going to be a major project, not unlike the funding that we received from the state to do Pulaski Boulevard. That was a $13 million project, but it was through the TIP process. It's a plan that the state puts together and they prioritize, and those projects take years to get through the planning process, and through the hard work of Jim and Don DiMartino, our DPW superintendent, we got that project through, and it's going to be a $6-7 million improvement. It's really going to change the face, I think, of that whole corridor, and the biggest thing is we all know how much people like to get out and walk and
Right.
on safe sidewalks.
Yep.
And the sidewalks will be improved, traffic flow will be improved, and it'll connect right through our town center, which is under construction, is going to be under construction this summer as well. And Jim did a great job, as I say, getting that project through the TIP program. And as you know, Tuesday on our weekly department head meeting, Zoom meeting, where we talk about all things going on in town, we talked about what's going to be the next TIP project. So we're going to queue up another one, but that'll tie right into the town center, which is another project we we will have under construction this summer. And if you'd like, maybe Jim can talk about how that ties in and how that one's
Absolutely.
funded.
Yeah, so that actually is bringing both parties together. So that TIP project from the bus barn to the town center is a long stretch that the state will be funding to improve. And then, as we were mentioning, the Curtis Apartments and Lincoln Properties, there's some impacts to the town center as well. So they've provided some mitigation there. We leveraged that private investment and received a rather large MassWorks grant to improve the town center itself. So that TIP project is going to feed into that MassWorks grant, and so the town center will be widened some. We all get stuck at that town center, at that light, and this will allow for some improved flow and safe turning movements. And it's going to allow for, I think, that the flow of traffic to be vastly improved. And the goal is for those lights to start talking to each other. So on the 140 corridor, I don't know how many times I've been stopped at the town center and then stopped later at Blackstone. And the goal is to have all this synced up and talking. So again, that town center intersection wouldn't have happened without the private investment that we saw. And then again, the hard work from all the staff and the boards to support these grants that we're actively seeking.
And that's a project that's been in the works for 10 years. So
Wow.
they don't happen overnight.
Right.
They take a lot of persistence. And fortunately, we got there, as Jim said, with the help of the private development and the state grant. Same thing with the Route 126 corridor. Many years in the works, but it's going to, it's really going to improve the center of town and pedestrian traffic. And one of the things in our master plan from 10 years ago was the downtown. How do we make it somewhat of a downtown? We don't have a traditional downtown like Franklin or Milford, but it is a town center, if you will, the town common, and all this development certainly will tie it all in nicely.
Yeah, the documents relative to the plan are available, but just if we could touch on one of the bigger topics of, we bought the Domino's building. It's going to be knocked down. That road is actually going to be one lane wider. And then at Rockland Trust, we have a much wider turn because we're taking some land by eminent domain. How far in either direction does it go where we have the widening of the road?
Picture from Walgreens, it starts to widen. We had some takings in front of Walgreens. It widens up in front of what used to be the police station. But we built our town park knowing this was going to happen. So we didn't put a lot of trees or benches out there.
Right.
I'm sure people would be concerned, geez, the town spent all this time and effort building that park and now you're tearing it up. Well, we anticipated, we knew exactly where the edge of that construction area would be. So the greatest widening is in that area in front of the municipal center area, and what it does is it provides additional stacking so you can have more vehicles coming through an intersection at one time, and then the widening continues. It starts to taper down after the town hall and finishes up right around Santander Bank. So that's about where it ends, the widening there. The biggest widening on the other side is going to be right at the Rockland Trust. It'll be pushing that parking lot back, and we've had a lot of conversations, and we've had an agreeable taking with all the property owners. All the property owners have been cooperative, and of course they get compensated for the taking, and that's all been executed. And I think
one of the biggest frustrations, if you're coming north on 126 toward the center of town, you get backed up because there's no place to get into line at the Domino's. So here you'll have that left turning lane going toward Milford and two straight through lanes heading toward the north.
Certainly going to help. It's not going to completely solve the problem, but there'll be more stacking and allow for more stacking in the town center and more vehicles able to get through per light cycle. So it is going to have a major improvement.
Do we have a sense? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Do we have a sense of how long it's going to take to do this widening? Is it like the
2
whole
years,
summer?
two construction
okay.
seasons. So it'll be this construction season and next year. So the estimate, I think, is 18 months, but
Okay.
it's not unlike it's as complicated and probably involved as the Maple Street Route 140.
Okay.
That was about the same dollar amount. It's a little bit bigger than that. It's probably about a third bigger as far as budget goes. So comparable to what happened there. And
Right.
when you think about the improvements at that intersection,
dramatic.
we're used to seeing it now because it's been in place for a while, but it's pretty dramatic.
Right. So we're going to need to be a little patient over the next 18 months,
but I
it'll
don't think
be
it's
well
going to be
worth
like
it.
the Medway situation in 109 where they
No.
were doing sewer and water and
Right.
it took 4 or 5 years.
Right, right.
This is something that'll be much
Yep.
faster. We talked about Curtis Pond and we've talked about across from Rockland Trust. So to give some perspective, we have Mill Street, which is the street next to the old post office. And we have the entrance to the town hall, which is at Walgreens. And we have the entrance to the Lincoln properties, that big stone wall. And our next topic would be, how do we connect them all?
That's right. So that's that missing puzzle piece, right? And what the planning board has been reviewing is a development called the Red Mill subdivision, and that is, if you recall, that's an area where the town meeting passed an overlay district to do somewhat like a cluster subdivision. So what that means is kind of a tighter neighborhood with a lot of open space. And so, a developer came forward to pursue this type of development, and we'll create that connection, that connection from where Lincoln and Curtis Apartments, and it'll loop all the way to right to Town Hall. And in between there would be, it's still in the permitting process, but approximately 160 homes, mostly single family, kind of small lot, much like you see over at Macy Estates, with about 40% of that entire parcel preserved as open space. So it would be a lot of nice trees preserved, a lot of sensitive environmental areas preserved, and it actually connects with the open space that Lincoln provided us. So it's that's a big thing for our conservation commission. I know they love to see contiguous open space. So I think as this permitting process progresses, you will see a really solid development come out of it, and that will be that missing puzzle piece. And one of the things that, from a planning perspective, I get really excited about, and maybe not everyone gets as excited as me about, but essentially from the Maple Street intersection all the way down, you loop in to the Curtis Apartments, to Lincoln, you loop down through this new development we're talking about now, you come down past Town Hall, you see the plaza in the center of town, you go through the intersection, you go all the way down 126 in the bus barn. You can do that all for brand new sidewalk and brand new bike lanes. It's going to be a real facelift and a great connection point. The Franklin has done some things to be able to get you to the MBTA. It's a little bit of a challenge, but we're working through the logistics there. But I think it's a really great loop. Again, this Red Mill project, if it gets completed and permitted here, is again going to be another boost to the town center. The goal here is it's the connectivity to the town center it's so close that we hope that on the weekends these folks are able to walk to the plaza, support our local businesses. There's a lot of great shops in that plaza that need more visibility, and I think this will definitely help that.
Wonderful.
And Red Mill, just for the clarity of the name, is also people refer to it as Lobusser, which confuses some people thinking that it's two projects, but it's one.
Same home.
But maybe we can touch on, as part of these developments, what the town is benefiting. We obviously talked about sidewalks, but what are some of the other benefits that we're going to see out of them if we can get into those?
Sure. The Red Mill project, it has something that was presented to town meeting because it's a downtown overlay district. It provides for greater density than otherwise would be provided for in our zoning, and for the town to allow the developer to do that, there has to be some trade-offs, some give and take, and we like the concept, we like the idea. They came before the Board of Selectmen, and we negotiated a development agreement with them before it went to town meeting. Essentially, what they'll be providing is $20,000 per unit of mitigation as they receive their building permits. $20,000 would go into an account, and that's specifically for the schools. There's been a lot of talk about early childhood education program and a facility that could be developed with those funds. So that'll go towards that. They're also mitigating our stormwater in the center of town. They're taking all the stormwater from the town center all the way up to St. Blaise Church, and they're actually building a stormwater basin for us, which will be behind the Walgreens. Very expensive, costly, and something that we need to do as part of the stormwater management. There's been a lot of talk about it, and this will be a huge improvement for us and something that we need to do anyway before we receive enforcement action. We need to start building these basins. So they're taking care of that for us. They've also agreed to take down the dominoes for us as part of their project, because their entryway is going to come right out at that Walgreens. So we took the dominoes as part of the widening that's going on there. So that's some savings as well. So there's a fair amount of mitigation, and one of the big things they're going to be doing is extending sewer right through their project, coming down to Mill Street, and that allows other properties to tie in, most notably the plaza there. They've got a serious issue where, or I shouldn't say serious issue, the system's not failing, but it's very costly for them to maintain. So this will allow them to tie into town sewer as well. So there's a lot of benefits there. Jim, did I miss anything? Jim, of course, working with the planning board is on top of all these things.
Yeah, you hit on most of them. I think the one thing additionally would be that drainage on Mill Street. So historically there's been a concern of the runoff at major storm events, and there's some businesses down there at the end of Mill Street, and they've always had an issue there, and the developer didn't flinch. He's going to be working in the area, so he said, we'll figure a way to improve that drainage for them. So it's definitely going to be a benefit. I know I've talked to many of the business owners there, and they're excited to see some improvements there.
Yep. And the land that we're building on was Barney land originally?
Correct.
So basically it was a gravel pit. So we're improving an area with significant open space to the town. I think people are just going to have to get used to how they exit the property, because, no left turn coming out of Mill Street because of the traffic, or has that all been worked out?
Yeah, I don't think that's been determined yet, but of course they've got an easy out.
At the light.
At the light. They'll be able to come right up to the Walgreens intersection, go whichever way they want, and if they come up Mill Street and take a right, if that's the way they're going north, it works out fine. And going out the other way to 140, there'll be a traffic light there. So it should work nicely.
The thing that's comforting is these developers that we're working with are being very proactive with us and helping us address some very significant issues we've had. So it's more than just the builder getting what they want in Bellingham. It's very much a mutually conducive environment to create with and for them, right?
Absolutely, and it's going to make their property more desirable.
Right, exactly.
The open space within the Red Mill project, the access to the town common, easy commuting as far as getting in and out. If it was a nightmare, initially the only way out was going to be onto 140 or onto 126 up Mill Street, and that just doesn't work because you can't take a left-hand turn out of Mill Street. I mean, there's some now, but to put 150, 160 units in there and expect that people are going to come out, and so the solution was what we wanted, and they figured it out, was to bring the roadway right out to join the egress at the municipal center.
Right.
And that's what they've done.
Well, the last few topics actually continue through the center of town out 140 and really end up where we are today on Williams Street, Williams Way, I should say. So we got Pine Hollow in this area, Williams Way Solar, and the marijuana cultivation situation. So I don't know which of the two of you wants to talk about that, but
I can start off with Pine Hollow. So leaving town center and working your way down Mendon Street. Pine Hollow's off of a private way on Countryside. This was an interesting one. Took many years to permit, actually. A quiet, private development was already there, actually on either side of this land, and approximately 36 townhomes. wanted to site right in between there. So it actually went through the planning board a few different times, and eventually came to a conclusion about 2016, I want to say, and but ultimately just finished construction this past year. And the homes are rather nice. I've heard nothing but good things about the development, and it was a nice infill project there. Again, another one of these projects where we got a lot of open space, a contiguous open space to preserve in perpetuity, so no future development in that location.
And Williams Way?
Williams Way, and I learned yesterday it's William Way. There's no S on Williams Way. Shockingly.
I did not know that
Yeah,
either.
I didn't know that either.
Probably.
I'm going to have to check the sign and see
Yeah.
what it says down the end there. But we do have a major solar project that was, again, presented to town meeting some time ago. Is going to generate almost a couple $100,000 in revenue back to the town. And it's a site that not too many people are familiar with because it's out in the woods and going to create some good solar energy, something the state wants to see more of. We worked with Kearsarge as the developer. They're the same ones that did the development on the landfill. So it's a quality solar developer, and good revenue return for the town, and creating some good clean energy, which is one of the things that the state wants to see more of.
Right. Jim, do you want to touch on the cultivation
Yeah,
facility?
absolutely. So right next door to the solar is 26 William Way, and that is I believe approximately a 60,000 square foot building behind 24 William Way, and it allows for the cultivation of marijuana. So as I'm sure everyone's aware, at town meeting, the town allows for the growing of marijuana, not the retail sale of marijuana. So there's no retail sale at this location. It's simply the growing of. And so that's actually still under construction. They're moving right along. They're expecting to be complete this year and be up and running shortly thereafter.
Right.
And once again, we have our coffee table material. So these are documents that are available on our website. It's hard to believe that it could be that long, but this is the 140 corridor study. We have our Town of Bellingham housing production plan. We recently completed the 2020 master plan. Maybe we closed the segment talking about where we are with the charter review and how that's starting up.
Yeah, email just went out yesterday from Jim to the committee members for our first meeting, which would be the second Monday of the month, every month, the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. The town charter requires a committee be formed and to review the town charter every 10 years. So we're going to do the charter and the bylaws at the same time. So that work will start. The town charter was enacted in 1993, and it was adopted by the legislation. It was a legislation that's enacted to basically create a home rule charter. It talks about how our town runs. So if ever you want to know, how the community actually operates, the charter's online, and it's a easy read, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about your town government and how it operates.
And it would make for a great civics class at the high school. I think one of the things, simpler things that it talks about is we have a Bellingham Board of Selectmen. We are now referring to ourselves as the Select Board, and the Charter and Bylaw Committee will formally rename the committee if approved at town meeting. Well, this segment has run a little shorter than the last, I think, because we covered so much ground, and maybe we just got a little better at it. But our plans for our next segment, which will be a week later, will be to talk about the south end of town. And some of those projects range from the status of New England Country Club and what Ron Bonvy is up to there. We can talk about Bungay Brook. Some of the more obscure things is the proposed Hindu temple on South Main Street behind the old Bel Air Gardens, if you've been in town long enough, down in the Lake Hiawatha area. What else we have here? We got Bellingham Shores.
Lakeview Estates.
Lakeview Estates. So we still have to talk about several hundred more housing units that are going in the south end of town, but very appropriate because, as you said, some of these have been going on for 5 to 10 years. It's not something that someone walks in on a Tuesday and it's done by the following Monday. So good stuff on the website, and I'm sure Jim's always a phone call away. At least he is
That's right.
when we call him. I don't know if is there anything as we wrap up?
Just the main reason that we're doing this series is to just make it completely transparent what's going on, but more importantly, how we're working collaboratively with any new development that comes in town, and just making sure that it always has the best interests of our residents in the forefront.
We're summarizing hundreds and hundreds of hours of
Right.
meetings
Yes.
into one session. So these are,
Right.
yeah, some of them go back, as we say, 10 years. So it's a lot of information, and everybody can't be expected to stay up on all these things.
Right. And as always, if anybody has something that we haven't covered, all they need to do is go onto the website, click on the link, and we'll be happy to.
Yeah. And now
Cover
at the front of the website is a tab that says virtual meetings, and you can see the schedule and just log on from home. So
Right.
if you can't make a conservation committee, a planning, a zoning, or a select board, or school committee, or anything else, you can link through it through the town website.
Watch it on the couch in your jammies with your bowl of popcorn, because this stuff is riveting.
Yep. With that, Bellingham, thanks again for joining us for segment 2. We look forward to presenting segment 3 and answering any questions that you have. Have a good day.
Take care.